Zimbabwe President Robert Mugabe warns against further violent protests, days after the police crushed an anti-government march in Harare. How a young entrepreneur from Soweto is revolutionizing the way children read and write. And net overload sparks a digital detox for millions of Britons. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Githu. This is Africa 54. President Robert Mugabe is appealing for unity in Zimbabwe and to end the protest against his government. The 92-year-old leader made the appeal Monday at an event to commemorate veterans of Zimbabwe's liberation war at the country's national shrine in Harare. The ceremony has, however, been overshadowed by a wave of opposition to his 36-year rule in the form of public protest. Zimbabwe's chronic economic woes have intensified in the wake of a drought and a severe cash shortage that has held up salaries for civil servants. This week, more protests are expected against the government's introduction of import restrictions. Monday, Mugabe ruled out lifting the restrictions, saying they are meant to protect the country's industries that are struggling to compete with South African manufactured goods. A powerful suicide blast killed more than 60 people and wounded at least 160 others at a hospital complex Monday in the southwestern Pakistan city of Quetta. The blast occurred shortly after dozens of lawyers gathered in Quetta's civil hospital to protest and mourn the killing of their provincial bar association's president in an early morning drive-by shooting by unknown gunmen. Hospital officials say that more than 24 of those wounded are in critical condition and fear the death toll could rise. Most of the victims are lawyers and journalists covering the rally. A splinter faction of the extremist Pakistan Taliban Jamaat-ul-Ahrar claimed responsibility for the shooting and the subsequent bombing. In the race for the White House, Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump and his Democratic rival Hillary Clinton are expected to outline their economic plans during campaign stops this week in Detroit. In recent days, Trump has been continuing to criticize Clinton, mocking her for saying that she had short-circuited while speaking about her use of a private email server while at the State Department. Amanda Scott reports from Washington.
Trump says the American people do not want a president who is going to short-circuit, adding that Islamic State militants are salivating at the prospect of her election.
She used the term short-circuited. She took a little short-circuit in the brain, and she's got problems.
Clinton has said she has repeatedly acknowledged that using 2 email accounts was a mistake.
Director Comey said there was absolutely no intention on my part to either ignore or in any way dismiss the importance of those documents because they weren't marked classified.
Former New York mayor and federal prosecutor Rudy Giuliani said he would have prosecuted Clinton over her handling of the documents.
I mean, first of all, she lied. She didn't short-circuit. She lied last week when she said the FBI found that she hadn't lied.
Clinton and other officials have said classified documents have not always been clearly identifiable.
So when she says there wasn't classified information, that's what she means. It wasn't marked.
A recent ABC News Washington Post poll gave Clinton and her vice presidential candidate, Virginia Senator Tim Kaine, an 8-point lead ahead of Trump and his running mate, Indiana Governor Mike Pence. Amanda Scott, VOA News, Washington.
In Egypt, some Muslim women are breaking away from the mainstream and are not wearing a headscarf. VOA talks to Egyptian women who explain their complex relationship with the simple scarves and their fight for the right to wear what they want, whatever it is. Hamada El Rassam reports from Cairo.
Many Muslim women wear the hijab by choice. For them, it represents piety. And in Egypt, religion is in fashion.
فأكيد ربنا هيبقى عارف ان انا كنت بعمل ده عشان اتقرب اليه وانا عايزه.
I wear it to get closer to God and make him happy in whatever way I can. He knows I wear it for him. But also, it makes me feel more mature and also look more mature in public.
In a flurry of activism, Immediately following the 2011 uprising, many women decided to abandon their hijabs as a symbolic gesture of their freedom.
ما كانش فيه زعيق بس أنا أصلاً كنت صغيرة جداً فما كانش فيه.
My father did not yell at me, forcing me to be veiled, but I was so young when I started wearing the hijab. It was never my decision.
For Egyptian women, there is pressure to both wear and not to wear the hijab. Some upscale restaurants ban veiled women, but unveiled women are subject to abuses from friends, family, or even strangers.
على أي حد هو مجرد مواطن عادي يعني.
The taxi driver seemed normal, but then his language became violent, saying, "Your clothes are sinful and you should not be in public without a hijab."
In Iran, some men are posting pictures of themselves in hijabs as a part of an internet campaign to protest laws forcing women to be veiled. Some Egyptian women say they support this campaign because more than anything else, they feel their clothing should be their choice.
لا ممكن في لحظة من اللحظات أفكر في قلع الحجاب خصوصا إن مشكلتنا في مصر بجد يعني.
At some point, I might think of taking off the hijab. But our problem in Egypt is our class system. I'm not sure I should say this, but if you go to average people's houses without a headscarf, they look at you like you are strange and you feel awkward.
The Egyptian government doesn't dictate what women should wear. But Sahar says real freedom will come when nobody even tries to do so. Hamada El Rassam for VOA News, Cairo.
Scientists and environmental activists say that deforestation across Africa is a cause to many long-term socio-economic problems that afflict the continent. Trees not only provide a habitat for animals, they also play a key role in the fight against climate change. VOA's Jackson Vunganyi reports on an initiative in South Africa that seeks to engage local communities in tree planting activities, both in the cities and in the rural areas.
In Africa, millions of households use wood on a daily basis to cook their meals and for other energy needs. This dependence has resulted in a high rate of deforestation in both rural and urban areas. Figures show that in several sub-Saharan African countries, the rate of deforestation exceeds that of the global annual average. In South Africa, a tree planting initiative named Green Pop is seeking to reverse this trend. Its co-founder, Misha Tisdale, says that his organization, which already planted 5,000 trees in the last year, hopes to plant 8,000 more this year.
So for me, trees are an incredible thing. I mean, I think they're largely taken for granted, I suppose, because we're so disconnected from how the world has consistently given us resources. You know, every breath we draw, we get trees. Trees provide for, I don't know how many millions of different medications and medicines. Resources, these bookshelves and tables and chairs that we're sitting on, we're so inextricably connected to trees. 40% of our clothing material comes from a tree pulp. We'd be half naked right now if we didn't have trees.
Right. Studies show that while deforestation in the developed world is mainly caused by logging and other commercial activities, the leading causes in Africa, specifically in urban areas, is associated to social and economic inequality.
When you look at the leafy, green, privileged suburbs where the minority live, and then the very not leafy, not green at all, and a lot of, I suppose, lack of pride of place, reason to celebrate the spaces people live in. And we saw this. We'd seen this many times in the work that we'd done and the volunteering we'd done, and we thought, what a great way to get people to connect around something that's so beautiful and neutral, put a smile on your face. It's a legacy in itself. You know, the metaphor around planting a tree is we're talking about hope here. And to get South Africans to connect over these neutral activities was a beautiful way of bridging those social gaps.
So you started off in Cape Town, your community, but you moved on. Can you tell us about your journey? How many other places have you planted trees so far, and where else are you going to go next?
So we have various projects around sub-Saharan Africa, but our main project is called Green Pop Zambia. It's a festival of action where people can come from all over the world, plant trees, permaculture, food forests, environmental wall murals, natural building courses, rocket stoves, solar cookers, and give people a reason to celebrate. So bring bands and poets and environmental speakers and people that are celebrated, dancers, musicians, all sorts of people that can come together and talk, start dialogue, and then act.
According to the UN, the world has lost over 80% of its trees in the last decade alone. Scientists warn that if this trend is not countered by tree planting operations across the continent, the economies and livelihoods of many African communities would be threatened. For VOA, I'm Jackson Vunganyi in Washington.
The International Paralympic Committee on Sunday banned all Russians from the Rio Paralympics next month because of the widespread doping culture that it has polluted the sport in the country. The committee announced the decision to suspend the Russian Paralympic Committee in Rio, with its president, Phil Craven, saying that Russia's Paralympians were part of a broken system that stems from the Russian government. Russia immediately says it would be appealing against the ban to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. The committee's decision follows the publication of the McLaren report last month that implicated Russian para-athletes in the widespread doping and cover-ups that led to the selective banning of many competitors from the Olympics. We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, a young entrepreneur from South Africa's unique approach to promoting literacy. Stay with us.
From science and technology, here's What's New.
What's new? Technology startup company GeoOrbital out of Massachusetts has patented an electric bicycle wheel that can be attached to just about any make of bicycle. GeoOrbital's Michael Bertoff.
We rearrange. Normally, you'd have the battery in one place, a motor in another place, and a wheel in a third place. And then you'd have all the electronics sprinkled all over the place. We just put it in one package.
A 500-watt motor, a lithium battery, and a suite of electronics all fit into the radial of the wheel with a tire made out of high-density foam to avoid a flat. Attach the wheel in less than a minute with no tools, and your ordinary bike is now an electric bike that can accelerate to 32 kilometers per hour in 6 seconds. Go 30 kilometers with no pedaling on one charge, or 80 kilometers with a little leg action. The wheel costs $800 with first order scheduled for delivery in February 2017. For VOA's What's New, I'm Todd Grossines.
Every year, hundreds of Africans come to the United States through the President's Young African Leaders Initiative. This program helps aspiring entrepreneurs to develop professional skills they need in pursuing their careers. This year, one of these young entrepreneurs received a Mandela Washington Fellowship and came to study in Boston. A 27-year-old South African from the suburb of Johannesburg, revolutionizing the way children in many African communities read and write.
His mission is simple: teach children to love books by helping them to write and publish their own memoirs. It's a vital project in South Africa, where literacy rates are low and schools are often criticized for not providing education that is up to standard. For Glad Mabele, who developed a love of the written word after penning down his grandmother's nighttime stories, developing a passion for writing and reading is one of the most important steps in a child's learning process.
And what I've come to learn is that this project of ours has sparked off so much reading. Because the book is about you see, it's a different story altogether. And what our government needs to realize is the importance of the self. Kids are aware of that. They're aware. In fact, I think kids are more aware than adults, than we are of themselves. And for them to put that in word or to be taught to document that, it allows them to tell the most magical stories, the wonder, the playfulness of life that we don't have as adults. You see it through the kids. Kids have those stories. You don't have to search for them. You just have to give them the tools to be able to put them down. And they do, and that's what we do. We just give them the tools to say, share your story. And they put their story down. And it's amazing what they come up with. It's incredible.
Mabele believes every child has a story to tell, and that with the right mentoring, many of them have the potential to develop into acclaimed writers, scientists, engineers, and doctors.
We go into schools, or we go into communities, learning centers, hospitals, orphanages, or places with children with disabilities. I'm really sensitive to their pain, and these are the places that we go to, and we meet these incredible children full of love. And sometimes we have to look for partners. We have to look for a business that can partner with us to be able to go in there and to afford these kids this opportunity to have their stories documented.
So far, the product has proved so popular that Mabele has been working day and night at his shared office in Johannesburg to keep up with the demand.
So the project is grown incredibly beyond my expectations. I mean, we are pushing out about 2,000 books, with each schools that we work with in a month. We have about thousands of books that go out, and not just that, but thousands of more kids who have been influenced or touched by these stories that are written by their friends. So we work with schools, and normally in a school we'll work with about 500 kids or 200 kids. So we do about 10 schools in a month.
Mabele's hard work has not gone unnoticed. He is currently in the United States on a Mandela Washington Fellowship that he received through President Barack Obama's Young African Leaders Initiative. He plans to use his trip abroad to form new contacts and build partnerships that will take Bala Books creations to new heights. Mabele says if he has his way, children across the United States will soon be joining their Soweto counterparts and publishing their own stories.
Zusha, speak up. That is the request of two researchers from Georgetown University here in Washington, D.C., who are working to reduce traffic accidents, which are the #1 killer of 15 to 20-year-olds worldwide. Molly Simon reports.
Health Organization has declared 2011 to 2020 the decade of action for road safety. Approximately 1.3 million people die in traffic accidents annually, and Africa has the highest rate of road fatalities for any region.
It's not just data that you look at and say that people died and all that. I've personally attended many funerals of people, close members of family, relatives and friends who died in the road carnage. Action is taken only when something happens, when there is a big accident that kills many people. That's when everybody rushes, the media, the cameras are there, and the people talk about it for a few days, and then it's forgotten until the next time that this accident happened.
In Kenya, roads are particularly dangerous. The country's 50,000 minibuses, called matatus, play a key role in the country's transit system, but are often driven recklessly. To combat this, two Georgetown University professors have studied and implemented a program called Zusha, which encourages passengers to speak up against reckless matatu driving.
It's a very unregulated traffic system. There are lights, which are broadly ignored. There are policemen who do not necessarily coordinate their traffic flow mediation strategies. And so in response to that, it's basically every man and woman for themselves. So our particular intervention was a simple one in which we put stickers in the back of these matatus that were quite forceful messages. They said things like, don't let a reckless driver get away with murder, or don't let a driver drive you into a grave, that kind of thing. We really wanted to show people what they could do. It was about empowerment.
We're rolling out the stickers in the East African countries, or at least testing, in fact, whether the idea that has actually been proven to be quite successful in Kenya works in Tanzania, Uganda, and Rwanda. One of the important features of this intervention is that it's very cheap. and does not rely on formal enforcement. In the long run, these countries will get rich. They'll build better, safer roads. People will drive better cars, and the institutions will be able to actually sort of enforce the rules to actually sort of minimize, the damage from road traffic incidents. In the short run, I think in a lot of these places, some cheap intervention that brings a bit more order and reduces risk is really valuable.
With support from partners such as the U.S. Agency for International Development, Kenya's National Transport and Safety Authority, and Direct Line Insurance, the Zusha project is continuing to expand and to call on passengers to raise their voices for safer roads. Molly Simon for VOA News.
It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Overwhelmed by the internet and social media? Millions of Brits may have found a solution. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Nigeria, Boko Haram's leader Abubakar Shekau has vowed to fight on in a new video, shrugging off an apparent split in the hardline jihadist group. In Kenya, a British sugar trader facing charges of trafficking cocaine worth $5.8 million was bailed out on Monday. In South Africa, Paralympic gold medalist Oscar Pistorius is back in prison after he was treated in the hospital for injuries to his wrists on Saturday. In Egypt, Nobel Prize-winning Egyptian-American chemist Ahmed Zewail received a funeral with military honors attended by Egypt's president. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Every song has a different meaning to each person that hears it and interprets it differently. Border Crossings is unique in that it lets the listeners decide what we're playing. But we bring in guests so that our audience has access to some of the biggest names in pop music today, and we reach out to the audience each and every day in different ways.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. The streets of Yokohama were very yellow last weekend as a Pikachu parade kicked off its week-long Pokemon festival. Thousands gathered to watch the dancers in Pikachu suits dancing and parading to the blaring music. Yokohama City began hosting the Pokemon-themed festival since 2014, but this is the first time they held a Pikachu parade. The city is not linking the festival with the Pokemon Go smartphone game, which has gone viral worldwide. Next up, the sights, sounds and smells of daily life can be overwhelming, especially for people suffering from sensory overload. It makes simple tasks like a trip to the supermarket a huge challenge. But a new program in Australia hopes to change that. At Freeville Foodland supermarket in Adelaide, where the quiet hour starts, the shopping continues, but the piano player plays his last note. The lights are turned down, the fish shops cleaned up, the baker stops baking, and even the cash register's ding is turned down. The long-term plan is to introduce this concept around the world. Meanwhile, in the UK, some internet and cell phone users are trying to dial down sensory overload. A new report from the UK communications regulator Ofcom shows that the average British person is online for more than one whole day each week. The digital bombardment has spurred 15 million of the internet users, or 34%, to try a digital detox. Several companies have spotted a business potential in this need for unconnected breathers, offering retreats where smartphones and internet are banned. One company has invented a piece of technology that helps digital addicts called wearable tech. The device filters incoming messages so that the phone only vibrates from notifications from the most important contact. And that's what's trending today. Ivory Coast is the world's top producer of cocoa, but hardly any of it is processed into chocolate there. Instead, the cocoa is sent abroad to chocolate makers in Europe and elsewhere. This is a general problem throughout Africa. Massive exports of raw materials, but few finished goods. As Emily Eob reports from Abidjan, several Ivorian entrepreneurs are working to change that formula. 100% Ivorian chocolate bar at a time.
Suzanne Kabani is one of the few Ivorian chocolate makers in the country and also was one of the first.
Look, this is 100% pure cacao. Inside you have cinnamon, and as soon as you put in hot milk, it becomes hot chocolate.
The West African nation is the world's biggest producer of raw cocoa, but produces very little chocolate itself. Most chocolate in stores comes from abroad. 10 years ago, Kabani wanted to prove that it was possible to make high-end chocolate in Ivory Coast from local product, but it was hard to convince Ivorians it could be done.
When we would go to people and tell them, come buy chocolate made here in Ivory Coast, even Ivorians didn't even want to try it. I started creating various flavors adapted to local tastes to encourage the population to eat their own product.
And it worked. Ginger, cashew nut, coconut, the products are locally sourced. Customers of La Maison du Chocolat Ivoirien are mostly middle-class Ivorians and expats, and the business is going well. Kabani plans to open a second shop in Abidjan. Some young entrepreneurs, such as former banker Alex Emmanuel, have also recently joined the growing local chocolate-making scene. His business has taken off, and he already has had to refuse some orders until he can expand production. But learning the trade is not yet popular. Emmanuel says it's because people have the mistaken belief it is complicated and expensive to make.
They think, why make something that doesn't interest people? Who will buy it? They prefer to make cakes because they know they'll sell them. But chocolate is expensive, and it's our role to make a cheaper, more affordable chocolate that regular Africans can buy.
Beside his hallmark chocolate, Instant Chocolat, he recently launched a more affordable chocolate bar. At 30 US cents, the 50-gram bars have been selling fast.
The price is very competitive. For that chocolate bar, 200 francs, it's very cheap.
We want to see how a chocolate made in Ivory Coast tastes. Yes, it's good.
Emmanuel's next bet is to raise enough money via crowdfund to attend the Salon du Chocolat in France and prove that Ivorian-made chocolate can rival the chocolate made abroad. Emilia for VOA News in Abidjan.
And that's our show for today. A very good night from Washington.
If you come to a bridge and want to get to the other side, chances are you will cross it. But is crossing a bridge really what Jonathan and Anna are talking about?
Cross that bridge when you come to it.
Whew. It took me all day to ship my materials to Paris for the pop-up book conference. Now I have to book my flight and hotel.
What if there aren't any hotel rooms available in Paris? You know, many people travel there this time of year.
Oh, I'll cross that bridge when I come to it.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm sure you'll find a room. Yeah, maybe.
This useful expression means you do not want to worry about a possible future problem. Instead, you will deal with the problem if it happens. Usually, this idiom means there are many things to worry about, and you are not willing to focus on a problem that is only a maybe. And that's English in a minute.